my life I've labored so that we might live in comfort. All my life I've watched my sister work away the day. Doesn't Mary understand that all the house should be just so? Doesn't Martha know that people need attention too? Welcome, Rabbi, please sit down while I attend to dinner. Welcome, Rabbi, please sit down and have some conversation. Can it be that he'll look beyond my housework? Can it be that he'll look beyond my chat? Can it be that he'll see instead what's in my heart? Can it be that he will look beyond? Can it be that he will see? Can it be that he will show God's love to even me?
Please join me for the prayer of illumination. That's in the bulletin and on the screen. God, you reach out to us and invite us to listen with quiet hearts and minds. Like the disciples and all Christians before us, we long to hear your living word. Because we know that through Christ, we can begin to understand how you call us. Please help us open our ears, hearts, and minds to hear your truth given to us. Jesus visits Martha and Mary. Now, as they went on their way, he entered a certain village where a woman named Martha welcomed him into her home. She had a sister named Mary, who sat at the Lord's feet and listened to what he was saying. But Martha was distracted by her many tasks. So she came to him and asked, "Lord, do you not care that my sister has left me to do all the work by myself? Tell her then to help me." But the Lord answered her, "Martha, Martha, you are worried and distracted by many things. There is need only one thing. Mary has chosen the better part, which will not be taken away from her." Here ends the reading.
Summer has a way of helping us to slow down a little and pay attention, to notice what's really important, to reconnect, and to revel in beauty. And on this summer Sunday, our short story from Luke is also inviting us to slow down and pay attention, to set down all that would distract us, and to reconnect with Jesus, with God, the source of love in our lives. In her poem, The Summer Day, the late poet Mary Oliver reveals how she paid close attention to a grasshopper that had flung herself out of the grass. I don't know exactly what prayer is. I do know how to pay attention, how to fall down into the grass, how to kneel in the grass, how to be idle and blessed, how to stroll through the fields, which is what I've been doing all day. Tell me, what else should I have done? Now, had Oliver been writing about the visit of a Jewish itinerant preacher to the home of Martha and Mary some 2,000 years ago, she might have said instead, I do know how to fall at his feet and listen. And I know how to prepare a feast for the Lord. And I know how to let myself be taught and moved and guided, how to be healed and nurtured and blessed. I know how to choose the better part. Last week, Paul helped us to understand the parable of the Good Samaritan as an invitation to receive humbly. He reminded us that giving and receiving are interwoven, and that receiving graciously is just as important as giving generously. Next week, the lesson will focus on the importance of prayer and discipleship, on the importance of talking to God, having a relationship with God. This week, we are invited to choose the better part. This week, we are lovingly reminded of the importance of making God the first priority in our lives, before everything and everyone else. It's a simple request. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your strength. You shall love God first and foremost before everything else. It's simple, but it's not easy. And it's not easy because we are almost always distracted. Distracted from others, distracted from ourselves, and distracted from God. We drive with music blasting, or while talking or texting on the phone. We spend countless hours on our devices and on social media. We check our phones while the person sitting across from us waits for our full attention. We eat mindlessly, on the run or in front of the TV, not stopping long enough to really enjoy our meal. Our intention is so divided. And we suffer the repercussions. High stress levels, indigestion, heartburn, increased anxiety and worry, disrupted sleep, to name a few. Now, the word for distraction in Greek can be translated as pulled away from. When we are distracted, we are pulled away from that which longs for and needs our attention. So it's an attitude and a way of being. And if we can be pulled away from ourselves and from one another that easily, this morning's gospel story reminds us that we can also be pulled away from God. We can get so caught up in the demands and the activities of our daily lives that we lose sight of Jesus. We lose sight of our connection with the divine source. And we forget that Jesus is the source of our salvation, of love, of grace in our lives, and of the deep peace that he promises us. If only we would pay attention. When we are distracted, we're also often anxious and worried, the same way that Martha is anxious and worried in this morning's story. Now, do you notice that Jesus does not chastise her for working or cooking or any manner of doing? Despite the years-old battle, perhaps the decades or centuries old battle of, so who's better, Martha, Mary, which way? I don't think that's what this is about. Jesus chastises her tenderly for how she is being distracted, pulled away from him and what he has to teach her in that moment. She's being pulled away from Jesus as she frets and fusses and fumes, and she's letting herself be pulled away from her own quiet center, from that deep place of connection between her and God. And she wants to pull Mary away too. Yet Jesus won't support her in this effort. Instead, he encourages her to choose the better part, to choose the one thing that will make the difference. Him. So this is not an either-or story between doing and listening, between which sister is better, or which one chose better, really. It's a story about the need to pay attention and to put God first. I'm certain, for example, that Martha would have been able to hear every word that Jesus was saying, even though she was preparing the meal instead of sitting at Jesus' feet. Had she brought an attitude of presence and had attended to Jesus' teaching while making the meal, I doubt Jesus would have challenged her. But her frenzied resentment of Mary, he did not let go unchallenged. In fact, he's ultimately rather stern, saying that Mary's choice will not be taken away from her. Now, in our culture, it's easy to be convinced that working long and hard and even multitasking so as to get even more done is the way to go. After all, it's productive, and that's good, right? But Jesus says there's a better part to choose. A better way, one that reminds us that it's not all on us. The better way is time focused on him. So this suggests to me not that our work is not important or that getting things done doesn't matter, but that it's not the most important thing. Even though sometimes we act as though it is. Even though sometimes we think everything is on us. It really isn't. For we were made from and for love by a God who asks us to love with our whole beings, who asks us to draw closer rather than letting ourselves get pulled away, who asks us to choose attention and connection over distraction, and to stop being pulled away and choose the better part. Time focused on Jesus, on God, the source of love in our lives. According to one of my preaching mentors, Kathy Keimano, there's ample good news in this very short story. She writes, maybe when we remember who we are and what we are made for, we find we have plenty of time for the work that we have to do. And our tasks no longer distract us from that. Maybe the better part comes first. The good news is we don't save our own lives or the world with all the work that we do. Jesus does that. All we have to do is remember the better part. So yes, let us do good work in our homes, in our church, and in the world. But first and foremost, let's remember time given to listening to and paying attention to God. My friends, I hope you let Jesus prove it to you. I hope that as you choose to take time in God's company and to make that time your first priority before everything else, that the things that cause you to worry and feel anxious will seem less daunting. I pray that you find the quiet center out of which everything else flows, and that you feel a sense of spaciousness and freedom as you let Jesus help you carry the load. Jesus promised that his yoke is easy and his burden light. It's not all on us, even if sometimes it feels that way. Rather, it's all on Jesus, who gave his life and rose again that we might be saved and have life abundant. It's all on Jesus, who shows us the way of God's love. And all we need to do is choose the better part. Thanks be to God. Amen.